Hey everyone. So in this analysis I play, um, well I'm not really gonna say who I played, it's anonymous, and I'm playing the Black Pieces. Pretty typical game in a blitz situation. Um, if you wanna go deep and research this, it's like the Hungarian opening, but like Italian game. So Italian game colon not Hunger, Hungarian game, something like that. Not too sure. So this game normally, just like any other game, started out with white playing first e4, common response e5, knight f3, knight c6. This is turning into the Italian game. Then, you know, bishop to c4. Now, I responded by playing bishop to e7. Now, this is the Hungarian game setup. If I had played bishop to c5, turning into the quiet game, the Gioco piano, but I decided to go on and play bishop e7. Just a personal preference, nothing else to it. He responded by playing pawn d4, attacking the pawn on e5, trying to take control of the center, and I probably made the first mistake of my game over here. I took with the knight when I should have really taken with the pawn. But, I was just trying to take control of the center as well. I took with knight on d4, and he took with the knight. Obviously took the pawn, or took the knight with my pawn. And he's gonna get the queen involved soon, so he just put his queen out here. This is kind of good and bad for me. Um, it's bad because, well, I really don't have much development. Like white, you can see he's down into the fourth rank. He has a bishop that's out, he has a queen that's out, he has a pawn that's controlling the center. I, on the other hand, have absolutely zero development past my, original two ranks I started off with, the 7th and the 8th. Not even on the 6th rank. So I have to start developing, but the silver lining is that he did develop his queen early, and anytime you do that, I can achieve two things at the same time. I can basically get my minor pieces involved and threaten the queen, but at the same time, when I do that, even though I'm threatening his queen, he has to move the queen around, but at the same time, I'm also developing my minor pieces, so there's a lot of chance that I'm gonna gain tempo. And so, if I played bishop f6, if I hadn't done that, just forgetting about the bishop or putting anything on f6, the queen can come on g7, and that really spells disaster for me. So, oops, something with the zoom. Alright, I don't know. So, that's what I did. Bishop f6. Then, he pretty much had to move the queen or put something in front of it, so he decided to put the pawn in front of it. Pawn to e5. Well, at this point, I thought of an opportunity to develop my piece and, neutralize the threat from the pawn to my bishop on f6 by playing queen to e7. This pretty much guarantees that I can win back, not win back, but I can capture this pawn on e5 without loss, because the pawn's not going to take on f6 because it's pinned to the king. So now he has to move the king before he takes my bishop with his pawn. And that's exactly what he did. He castled the very next move. Now, I just played bishop to e5. if he does rook to e1, yes, my queen will be pinned to my king, but if he plays rook e1, I can capture with the bishop, and he loses his queen. Then he pretty much has no option but to capture my queen, and then I would capture with the knight, and I essentially would have traded my bishop for the rook. So that's good for me. But the queen's threatened, so he decided to move the queen to g4, which I thought was a mistake. In fact, it is a mistake, because it doesn't really achieve much. It's not targeting my f7 weakness square for black. And at the same time, I can just play, or I did play, I played d5, achieving two purposes basically, threatening the queen on g4 by the bishop on c8, and at the same time threatening the bishop on c4 with the pawn on d5. And obviously there's not much he can do to save both of his pieces. He's either going to have to sacrifice his queen, or let me have the bishop for a pawn. And that's like the only wise choice, let me have the bishop. But he persisted on with his attack, threatened my queen. He played bishop g5. Again, I didn't like this move in particular. I'm not making any fantastic moves. My opponent is just spreading himself thin over here. But that sometimes happens. That's sometimes how you win games in chess. So I'm not gonna capture the bishop with my queen. So I attacked that as well. So at this moment, I played pawn f6. Now there's a triple attack on white. The two bishops are attacked, as well as the queen by the bishop on c8. So he really needs to make a decision on what he wants to give up. But he persisted with his attack, and which necessarily isn't a bad thing for me, because I can just keep on attacking with my pawns and keep on developing my pieces. So he plays bishop to b5. My response just simply, pawn to c6. Again, triple attack. He has to give something up, and he decides to take with his bishop. He decides to give up his white bishop. And so obviously I take it back, bx c6, and his turn to move. He plays, well, right now it's still in double attack, right? Because the bishop is still eyeing down the queen, and the pawn on f6 is eyeing down the bishop on g5. He decides to play, or give me a check by queen h5. Getting the queen out of the way of the bishop, but at the same time, giving me a check. Not many options to move, I get that, but I can just play pawn to g6, attacking the queen again, and attacking his bishop, also getting my king into safety from the queen's check. From there on, he decides to, take material as he's going out, right? So he takes, he plays bishop takes on f6, and I decided to take with my queen. Now I could have, for a second I was thinking how to take. I could have taken with the bishop, or I could have taken with the knight. If I taken with the knight, it's threatening the queen. The queen has to move. I'm gaining tempo. But at this point, I'm basically up by 2 bishops, right? I'm up by a bishop pair. So whenever you're up, it's just generally advised just to go into the endgame as soon as possible. The endgame being that there are less pieces on the board. So at this point, if I decided to take with the queen because I was looking to exchange the queens as soon as possible, so I would have a good endgame. So I took queen, I took the bishop with the queen, queen goes to f6, and then he has to get the queen to safety, right? He played queen e2, and I guess that's a natural move. Didn't really think too much on that. And right now I'm originally, I was eyeing down this whole diagonal, getting my bishop to b2, pretty much just cornering the rook, but queen e2 prevents that move because the rook becomes pinned to my king. And essentially I want to get out of that because f4 can come down and I'm losing my rook for, or I'm losing my bishop for a pawn, which I don't want to do. So I played knight to e7, developing, preparing to castle on the king side, and at the same time, if he plays f4 now, I can just move my bishop, and I'll have a good game. He decides to play knight to c3. Now this stops me from going to b2. So, and at this point I'm up in material. I'm up in material by like 5 points. So I'm not going to give up my bishop for his knight. And I'm just gonna keep on developing as much as I can. And I decided to castle. Just get the king in the corner. He doesn't have a light squared bishop, so that's fine. This whole king safety isn't like too brilliant for me at the moment, but my pieces are active, except for the rook on a8. All of my pieces, I mean all of my pieces are eyeing down the king side. So it's gonna take some time for white to get his attacks on. He has 2 rooks, but they're all like pretty much trapped into the first rank. The knight over here on c3 isn't too active, doesn't really have any good squares to come down to, can pretty much only go down to a4 in the future, so I'm not too worried about that. And I feel like I'm gonna have a good game, so I just went ahead, followed the principles, and just or not, oh, his turn to move first, my bad. So he moved his rook to d1. That's good. Doesn't really do anything for me. And I just decided to develop and get my knight into the action. Wasn't really doing much on the e7 square. Was protecting these 2 pawns, but I think they can take care of themselves. So get the knight into the action. Eventually move down to d4, control the center, have a stronghold in the center. But I had to play. So I played knight to f5, and at this point, white resigned the game. Didn't really have much to play for. I'm not saying that this was a 100% win for black, but if I'm white, I don't want to play this game because I have an entire bishop pair, an active bishop pair, which can pretty much, even sacrifice themselves and have black a nice endgame. So that was the analysis for this game. Join me again for more. See ya.